All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. I wanted to promote my new book, The Notary Guide: How to Build a Mobile Notary Business. It debuted #1 as a bestseller on Amazon, and I hope you guys can support. It's only 99 cents. If you want to check it out, learn how to get additional income, you can.
Yo, 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 yo. What's up, everybody? My name is Juwan. This is the Misguided Podcast, where we intend to guide you to a better future. I'm sitting here with Veronica Llorca-Smith, free spirited freelancer. She does a bunch of stuff. So we're going to get all into it today and talk to her. How are you doing? Good morning.
I'm great. Good morning, good evening. I'm actually in Hong Kong at the moment, 7 a.m. on a Sunday.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you are, yeah. Welcome, everyone.
No, I appreciate you being willing to. We've been trying to schedule this interview for maybe 2 to 3 months now, and so I personally always do Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings because I have kids as well, and trying to save some weekend time for them. So I try and get things done, and it's been hard because you're just traveling and you're in a different country, right? So we finally found a time that works for both of us. And I'm glad to have you up here. I like to tell the audience how I found you. So I'm not sure if even you're familiar, but I had started Medium a couple months ago and articles and stuff, and then you have to get to like 100 people, right, to like start making money. And so I was just following a bunch of people, and then I came across yours and saw that you were, pretty popular on Medium. And then I saw that you were a freelancer and you showed people kind of how to grow on Medium. And then I found your LinkedIn and then saw that you were really popular on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, let me reach out to her. Like, she's post a lot. She's, cool. And you responded right away. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, awesome. And for me, it's really being a journey because you're saying that I'm very popular. I don't feel that way at all. And,
What?
and
Yeah.
if you had looked for me, I guess 7 months at all, you wouldn't even have found me because my posting activity back then was zero. So I think
Wow.
I can talk a little bit about going from zero in July 2022 to your onward, someone who is relatively popular, even though I don't see myself that way.
Well, you almost got like 5,000 followers on LinkedIn. You had about, I think you right now you got about like 2.3 on
Five
on
on Medium, yeah.
Medium. Yeah, so that's popular. I mean, I got 270 on Medium. For those who don't know and is listening, Medium is a writing platform. So a lot of bloggers, people go on there and write, short form content, and stuff. Or now they just copy the chat GBT stuff
Sure.
and post it on there. So, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Speaking of that though, you said you're kind of you didn't post a lot. So tell me what you mean by that. Like, what made you start posting?
Yeah, exactly. And when I say I didn't post a lot, I mean zero. And you can check the stats there. It's not like a couple of times a week or a month. No, it went from zero to a
uh,
million, actually, to a million views in LinkedIn, to be specific, in 5 months. And
that's
so what
crazy.
happened, and so this is a story of the before and after. I landed in Australia and I moved to Australia by accident. And what I mean by this is I was living in Hong Kong, went on holidays with my girls, and then due to COVID, we were locked abroad. So it was like a movie. We couldn't go back. And I was in Australia. I was trying to find a job. My background was always been in corporate. So I had been in Apple for many years, Estee Lauder. And so in my mind, I was going to continue climbing up the ladder in Australia. But things didn't quite work that way because of many reasons, I guess. I just didn't receive any feedback or any interviews. And so I was kind of this limbo, like, okay, I have almost over 15 years of corporate experience. I'm not finding a job. People don't see my value. Where do I get started? And so for me, the answer was to start building my digital community because I thought, well, if recruiters don't see my value, and if I don't have a network because I was new in Australia, definitely I couldn't wait for people to knock on my door. Recruiters were not knocking on my door. Contacts were not knocking on my doors. And so one day, I asked myself the question, well, what is the story I want to tell my daughters when I grow up? I don't want to tell them, well, I was in Australia and I didn't do anything about it. And so I started posting. And I think it was the 4th of July when I started posting. And oh man, there were so many things going through my head. Like, what are people going to think? What are recruiters going to say? People are
Yeah.
going to tell me all these sorts of things. But I just went out there and I said, this is my story. I'm going to share my learnings. I'm going to share my mistakes. and I'm just gonna get out there. And so I started posting, to be very honest, thinking that that would help me find a job in corporate, because that had always been my path until then. And then all of a sudden I realized that I was looking in the wrong direction, that instead of staying or sticking to the 9 to 5, I could become a freelance. I could work on my own terms. I could travel the world because I love traveling. I could go to the school pickups for my girls. And so what started as a posting to get a job ended up opening so many other career opportunities for me. And that's how I became a freelance.
That's crazy. So how long would you say it kind of took? Like, when did you see it really start to take off, right? As far as networks and your
So
following?
I would say it was actually surprisingly quick. I would say between 2 and 3 months is when I really started to see, oh wow, I'm having some traction. People are contacting me. I
Yeah.
was super active also, because it's not easy. So I don't want to say that you start posting and things happening. I was very proactive. I was posting every day. I was sharing my knowledge. I was taking courses on all sorts of things. I was reaching out myself to podcasts as well, just to send my message across. And I think this combination of different platforms and trying to share value and all these things, they started to get some traction after, I would say, 3 months. And in fact, my first official freelance opportunity happened in at the end of August. So yeah, really 2 months after I started. So it was pretty unbelievable.
That's crazy. I mean, that it does take a lot of work, and a lot of people don't realize that. Like, it could be draining at times, right? I mean, you literally just posted an hour ago on LinkedIn. So, what time did you wake up?
Well, that's the thing. Everyone has a different routine and different schedule.
Yeah.
I definitely belong to the 5 a.m. club. So because I have very young kids who tend to wake up super early,
Yeah.
for me, I need that me time before they wake up, and so that means waking up at 5. So that's what I do.
Yeah. So I'm similar, but it's been a struggle because my kids aren't sleeping right now. So mine is 3, and then my 1-year-old. My 1-year-old isn't sleeping, and so like it's hard to wake up at 4:30 a.m. right when you're not getting any sleep. But prior to her, like they go through phases, right? I would start to wake up at 4 to get that me time, right? Workout, come do some content and stuff. And but it's been a struggle lately. I've been waking up later and later each day just because
I can totally understand. It gets better. I tell you that mine are
yeah.
slightly older, 4 and 6, and it does get better.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I can't wait until like I can have that time. But yeah, no, that's really, thank you for sharing that. I kind of want to start from the beginning. Where are you from, actually?
So for me, that's a bit of a difficult question to answer, because I was born in Spain in the Canary Islands, but I don't remember really living there, because from the age of 5, due to my dad's job, we were traveling around the world. So originally from Spain, parents are Spanish, but I grew up in France. I grew up in Brazil, and I grew up in the Netherlands. And after that, I continued traveling. So I've been living in 9 countries. So a bit of a global citizen, I would say.
Yeah, you're kind of all over. How many passports do you have?
I only have one passport.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you got like different citizenship
No.
ones. Or...
Well, yeah, I have a permanent residency from different countries, but not passport.
Okay, what countries do you have permanent residency?
Hong Kong, because I've lived here for 15 years, I think, or 16. And Australia, because when I was there last year, I ended up applying for that as well. So yeah, permanent resident there as well.
Wow, that's crazy. So what made you move to Hong Kong? Like 15 years, that's a long time.
Well, when I finished my studies in Spain, so that was in the years 2000, there was not a job for me. The economy was really terrible, and I applied for this internship to work for the Spanish government abroad. So I passed all the tests. I actually scored really well, and I thought they were going to give me the destination that I applied for. That was Sydney. I could totally see myself surfing, sunshine, beautiful lifestyle.
Yeah.
And when I went to the interview, they said, actually, we think that you should go somewhere that is a little bit like more business and that is growing and more opportunities. And they told me that they were sending me to Shanghai. So this was in China. So this was early 2000. I did not know a single person that had ever been to China. The internet wasn't even widespread. So I accepted, and I left with a one-way ticket to Shanghai in 2004. And I stayed there for a few years. One of the companies sent me to Hong Kong. And I never looked back. And it's going to be 20 years since
Wow.
I left with my one-way ticket, and I'm still around.
That's awesome. I mean, that you must really love the country and everything there then. Like, how's, I guess when you moved there, you had your kids in Hong Kong, or did you have them somewhere else?
No, they were both born here.
Okay, so they technically have citizenship there as well.
PR, because it's a bit of a local regulation thing, but because I'm not ethnically Chinese,
Okay.
they don't have the citizenship, so they have the permanent residency. And my husband is Australian, so
Got
they
it.
have Spanish passport, and they have Australian passport, and they have Hong Kong permanent residency.
That's crazy. Oh man, it gets so like confusing, when you're like traveling. Like that must be hard trying to understand, right, politics in different countries, understand government, and understand like how the systems work, because they're totally different in each country. So how kind of was that challenge for you? I know you've been doing it for a while, so now it's probably much easier. But in the beginning, how was that trying to figure everything out?
So to be honest, for me, as you said, because I've been doing it since I was a kid, so I've moved to different countries where I had to learn different languages, where I had to go into different systems. For me, it's really second nature. So when I go into a country, I go with this mindset of, okay, this is a blank canvas. I'm here to learn. I'm here to make mistakes as well, and you just figure things one day at a time. So I think every time you move somewhere, you just have to go with that open mind. I think that things are not going to be the same. And that really helps, because otherwise you get stuck and you start, complaining. Why are things so difficult here? And why is there bureaucracy? And why do I have to apply for all these different things? So for me, it's really the mindset. It doesn't get easier because there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of paperwork and all of that, but it makes the process easier because it becomes something like natural. It's the same way for me learning languages. It's extremely difficult, but I take it as a process, and one day at a time, and every day I'm a little bit more fluent. So the same when it comes to moving to countries.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What would you say your biggest mistake was while traveling? Like forgot a passport somewhere, something crazy. What was your biggest mistake?
So I made a lot of mistakes, but I remember once before there was all this digital technology and stuff, you really had to have like your paper ticket, your flight ticket.
Yeah.
And I accidentally, I guess I was tidying up the house or something, and I threw it in the bin. And at the time, it wasn't as easy as saying, "Oh, you need a replacement." So I had to go to the police. I had to make up a story that it had been stolen or something. So yeah,
You were too embarrassed to tell them you accidentally threw it away.
But I've made so many mistakes. Another one, and it's really relevant for the audience. Please, if you travel, make sure that you check the regulation for when it comes to immigration in the different countries, because some countries, they require your passport to have a validity of at least 6 months. So you could end up like I did, with a passport that still had a validity for 5 months and 29 days. And they did not accept me to go to Dubai because it had to be 6 months. So don't make that mistake. That's the silliest mistake I've ever made.
So, whoa, do they just tell when you land in Dubai, they tell you no and you just have to turn around?
They don't allow you to land. So basically when they're doing the procedures on check-in at the check-in
Airport?
the airports. In my case, it was in Madrid. So the staff in Madrid was checking that wherever you're going, you're allowed to go to, whether you need a visa or whether you need, of course, a valid passport. And in my case, I was pretty sure it was 6 months, but I'm not very good with numbers. So it wasn't exactly 6 months. It was 5 months and 29 days. And I stayed behind. There was no margin for, for flexibility, no lenience. Nope, I had to stay.
So flight wasted, right? Kind of like, were you reimbursed?
Well, luckily my husband is a pilot, so we get a little bit of.
You guys, nice. That's cool. So
Yeah.
is he like an international pilot? Is he just flying like countries
International.
to countries and stuff?
Yeah, he's a cargo pilot. So at the moment,
Nice.
he's probably flying between Alaska and New York, I think.
Okay, nice. Do you come to the US often to visit, or are you just other countries?
No, usually it's more, well, in the past years, I guess, with COVID, we haven't been able to travel as much because everything was locked down. But because our family is in Australia and Europe. That's where we spend most of the time. And when it comes to leisure, we do a lot of Asia. I think I've visited almost every country in Asia because I've been living here for so long. For me, the US was more work. When I was working for Apple, I did my onboarding in Cupertino. I did my onboarding in Fifth Avenue. So I spent a lot of time there for work, and then I stayed for leisure as well.
Let's talk about that, because I did see that you worked for a couple companies, big companies, right? And so you said Apple. How did you get into Apple? When was this, and what did you do for Apple?
Yeah, so just like most things in my life, it was very accidental. So this was year 2011.
Okay.
And the day that Steve Jobs passed away, in Hong Kong, they were getting ready to open the very first store here in Hong Kong, in a very iconic mall called IFC. And so I was passing in front, and I remember it vividly because there were all these flowers that people had come to put at the doors with pictures of Steve and job for Steve. So it was quite emotional. And so I spent a little bit of time just checking and looking around that beautiful store. And all of a sudden, I saw a group of people with the Apple lanyard. So obviously, they looked like they were the leadership or managers. And one of them was a Spanish girl that I had met through networking in Hong Kong. And so I went to her and I'm like, oh my God, you're working here. So she happened to be the head of Apple in Hong Kong. And through conversation, I just mentioned, oh my God, it would be so amazing to work for Apple. But it was one of these aspirational things that I had nothing behind, just that aspirational comment. And she was like, are you kidding me? We are looking for people. We want people who bring diversity, who you've been in China, you speak several languages. Basically, 2 days later, I was sitting in an interview. The interview lasted for 7 or 8 months because I had to talk to all sorts of people from Cupertino to Shanghai and stuff. And after 7 or 8 months, I started with Apple. So that's how my journey started.
What was your role?
First, I was a business manager. So they have different divisions at Apple. And then after 3 years, they promoted me to business leader, who is very interesting because I think a lot of people know Apple for products for consumers, but Apple also does a lot of product for businesses. Mm-hmm. For example, if you think of designers, if you think of music, if you think like more in the freelance world. So there's a lot of people who use that technology. And so my role was to develop all the strategy for the business side of Apple in Hong Kong.
Oh, that's so cool. So you did your training out here in Cupertino. How long was that? And then you flew back to Hong Kong?
So my first training, so that was one of them. But the very first one was actually in Australia. They sent me to Melbourne for 3 or 4 weeks. And the reason why is because in Hong Kong, the training was in Cantonese. And I speak Mandarin, but I don't speak Cantonese. So because I was one of the very first managers, they sent me to an English-speaking country. The closest one for Apple was Australia, even though it's like 12 hours flight. Yeah. So that's why I ended up first in Melbourne. And then after a few months, I went to Cupertino and I was there also for a month or so. So they were really good on giving me like an amazing onboarding to set me up for success.
Please tell me that's when you met your husband in Australia, because that would be a crazy story.
No, it's not. No, but I have an even crazier story. We met for triathlon in Hong Kong because we were both pretty into fitness. And we did an Ironman together. And after the Ironman, we found out if we sweat together, we do an Ironman together, we must be together.
Nice. I love it. That's cool. I hope your wedding was in like running gear. That would be funny. Like try out there. That would be funny. But cool. So you said you speak a lot of languages and you've been to a lot of countries. Can we go down the list of how many languages and what languages you speak?
Okay, so let's go in chronological order. So I was born in Spain to Spanish parents, so I speak Spanish. That's my first language. Gotcha. Then when I was 5, we moved to France. So I went to a public school in France. So French is my second language. Then from there, we moved to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So I learned Portuguese. So that was the third one. Then up to that point, I didn't even speak English. So when people say that English is my second language, it's actually my fourth language because I didn't learn it until I was 15 when we moved to the Netherlands. And I did not learn Dutch because I went to an international school that was English-based. So that's when I learned English. And then after I did university, I did a program exchange to live in Italy. So I lived in Bologna and I learned Italian there. So that was the fifth one. And then I moved to China, and that's where I learned Chinese. So there you have the 6 languages, and I'm done. There's no more memory RAM for any other.
Yeah. What countries have you been to?
Visiting?
Yeah.
Oh, the
Is
list is
it the list okay, the list goes
over
on.
40.
You
I
have
can tell you some of the most exotic ones if you want. I'm not going to give you a list of 40, but in terms of very exotic ones, I was in a place called Palau. That is an island in Micronesia that is beautiful for the diving and just nature. So Palau in Micronesia was super exotic. I was in Myanmar, where you have like beautiful temples and pagodas. South Africa was also pretty incredible. We did a safari there, so the big fives. So I've been a bit all over the place.
No. Okay. What would you say was the hardest language to learn?
Chinese.
Chinese.
Chinese. I mean, it still is. I still learn every Friday. I have my online class. Yes, it makes me feel really young to still be a student. Every Friday I still study because there are like over 30,000 characters. Although most people, even very educated people, might only know 7 or 8,000. So yeah, it's something that I keep on learning. One of the reasons why it's very different, first, is because it's not alphabet based like English or the Latin languages. It's all based on characters. So that makes it really hard because you don't recognize absolutely anything. The second thing why it's very hard is because there are tones, so different tones. So for example, if I say in Chinese, la, and depending on how I say it, la, it can mean completely different things. So it can mean spicy, it can mean pull a door. And for people, it's like, well, you just said la. How can it mean different things? Well, it does.
Okay. Is that a reason why like Americans always think Chinese people are yelling? Is because they have to say it in a certain tone?
Probably. It's not necessarily yelling, but it's very, very a tonal language. So they would say things like la, and it's not like they're screaming. Is that if they say la,
yeah.
is it a word?
Yeah. No, that's exactly, that makes so much sense now though. Like, cause you always like Americans think they're yelling or they're rude, right? When they're speaking, but it's just their tone of voice. And I traveled to a couple of countries, and when I was in Austria, the language there was like very direct and like it came off harsh, right?
Yeah,
But
it's
it's
aggressive.
not. Yeah, it's aggressive. So that totally makes sense. Now
I was in Austria actually recently as well, in Vienna.
Yeah, that's where I was. I love Vienna. That was actually really cool. I went to Ljubljana as well. But Vienna is really cool.
Nice.
Good food. Cheap beer and cheap wine. Gotta love it. I see that you're a DEI consultant. Can you explain to the audience what DEI stands for?
Absolutely. So DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And basically, to explain in simple words, what I try to do in that type of work is help organizations be more inclusive. Because what we see very often is that when you look at the executive board of a company, it tends to be white men in their 50s that are financially well off. So we don't see a lot of women at that level. People with disabilities have a really hard time to even get started in the workforce. There are so many levels where people don't have equity. Even for myself, like English is a second language. So showing up on a podcast and speaking at 7 a.m. is harder than for someone for whom English is a first language. And so because we live in a world where it's just the reality that we all have different opportunities, equity is not the same for everyone, what I try to do is level the playing field and help companies try to be a little bit more inclusive, try to give more opportunities to those that have less. So it's a work that is super rewarding because it's helping not only the organizations, but is also going beyond, and you try to have an impact on society overall.
No, absolutely. And how long have you been a consultant in that field?
So that only started a few months ago when I started all my reinvention. Up to that point, I was always in roles more in leadership and people development. So as I mentioned, I was working for Apple, I was working for Estee Lauder, and I decided that I wanted to leverage all my expertise in the corporate world and all the experience that I had leading very large and very diverse teams to make something more impactful and help other companies try to break that the inequity that exists in the organizations.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about your book, The Lemon Tree Mindset, 19 Lessons to Reinvent Yourself. What made you write that book?
Honestly, it was my reinvention. Like when you're kind of doing things one step, one day at a time, you don't really realize the magnitude of what you're doing. But when I started that process of reinventing myself, and I went from being someone who had a lot of years of experience to suddenly being unemployed and feeling like really alienated, and then started to create content and becoming a freelance, and as you said, having a digital audience, it was quite a transformation. And I figured that if I was able to not just tell people this is my story, but share the methodology, break it down into very specific steps, it could help someone else. And so what I did in that book is going back to every single thing that I did. So how did I start to change what I wanted to do in my life? How did I find 30 minutes of reflection every single day? How did I start to create my value proposition? How did I start creating content on social media? So I started to break it down, and it came down to 19 steps. Very simple book, is only like 100 pages, but I figured, my journey could inspire, and my methodology could actually help other people go through the same path. So that was the reason, the why of the Lemon Tree Mindset. And one thing about the title, because it's meaningful to me, is that I felt that during that period when I was unemployed, I had a lot of challenges and obstacles. As I said, I was not considered for roles and so on. And in English, people always say, when life gives you lemon, make lemonade or something.
Make lemonade.
I was like, no way. If life makes you lemon, I'm not going to make lemonade. I'm going to plant my tree, my lemon tree. And that's where the concept came. Like, if you look at challenges, just turn them into opportunities.
Yeah, nah, that's awesome. And I love how you kind of connected that, because that is a very popular phrase in the lemon tree. I was going to ask, like, where does that name come from? That's not like that I never think of when I hear that phrase of a lemon tree, right? So you literally reinvented the phrase and like how you deal with it, right? And so that's awesome. And I think when people are going through these transitions, I actually went through kind of a reinvention of myself twice in the last 2 years, right? Obviously, the world went through a whole transition with the pandemic, but during the pandemic, I got laid off from a really stable job. And so that kind of like woke me up a little bit and was like, okay, well, wow, I was not expecting that. What do I do now? Right. I was like, all right, I really love real estate. Let me finally get into that. Right. And so I started getting into real estate, started getting into content creation and doing stuff like that I actually really like, and then got laid off again, because now we're supposed to be in a recession, right? So I recently got laid off in November. I was in real estate. I'm still in real estate, but I was in real estate with a company called Fly Homes. If you've heard of Redfin, obviously they're kind of like Redfin 12 years ago. So they're like techie startup real estate stuff. But yeah, their real estate agents were salaried, and then we would get bonuses on the homes we closed, and they just were not doing good with sales. And then they let 60% of their company go.
Yeah.
Crazy. And then you want to know something even crazier? They bought 2 companies after they fired everyone.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy how corporate America works?
Yeah. Oh. And when you look at all the layoffs, that's why I tell people, and I've been working a lot on personal branding, because it doesn't matter if you're working for the best company in the world, like I was for Apple. I didn't mention this, but I was made redundant at Apple after 7 years because of global restructuring. So you think you're safe, you're thinking you're one of these companies that is, Fortune 500 and so on. And then all of a sudden, Salesforce, AWS, Meta, you name them, like over 150,000 people laid off overnight.
Yeah. And that's like, I try and stress that now because I've been through it twice, right? Is like, thank God I had my businesses to like kind of keep me a little bit float and not like go so far down the rabbit hole as trying to like freak out and figure out, what's next. But you never just rely on one source, right? Never rely on just one source of income or one plan A, right? Like I am very, particular in making sure I have a plan A, plan B, plan C, all the way down, right? And so yeah, I like, and you learn that over time. It doesn't just happen, right? It's building, right? You're reinventing yourself. There's 19 stages, right? That's your book, right? 19. So but yeah, no, I appreciate you opening up about that too. We're kind of halfway through right now. I want to jump to a segment called the Hella Misguided segment, where I ask the same question to each entrepreneur and business owner that comes up on here. And that question is simple. It is, if you were to write a letter to your 18-year-old self, what would a summary of that letter be?
So first, I would say trust your intuition. I think we're very often conditioned by what society wants us to do, by the corporate world. And so trust your intuition. Follow your passions, even though if it sounds a bit cliche, and I talk about this in the book, I believe that we all have our superpowers. Maybe we haven't unleashed them yet, but if you stay true to what you love, chances are you're going to be much more successful because it brings you fulfillment. So I think that would be the second one. Third lesson, invest early. Invest in your education, invest in stock, invest in real estate, whatever it is, but start early on that investment mindset, because it will pay off. The next thing, and I definitely follow these, is take the risk, take the chances, like take the one-way ticket, like I did to go to China. Absolutely. I would also say, don't worry too much. Like, you will connect the dots looking backwards. When you're younger, trying to make sure that everything is connecting and everything makes sense, and you overthink things. And the reality is, I'm now 40. Well, I'm actually 42, but I like to say that I'm 40. And in my 40s. And looking back, it's amazing how the dots connect. Like I thought like the worst thing that happened to me was all of a sudden be unemployed, and then you reinvent yourself. And have an open mindset. Like, very often you're looking at the tunnel in the wrong direction. There is light, but very often it's not where you're looking for the light. So I would say keep that open mind. There are opportunities everywhere. Don't wait for the opportunities to come your way. If you don't find it, just go for it. And that's exactly the post that I wrote this morning when you were saying on LinkedIn, just to share with the audience. So last weekend was the Hong Kong half marathon, the official one. I really wanted to race, but I missed the entry because I was in Australia at the time. And so yesterday I decided to just go and run by myself. There were no spectators, no finisher medal, no water station, but basically, if the opportunity doesn't come your way, no excuse. I wanted to run it. Just go run it. Do your thing. Create your opportunities.
Yeah. Sometimes you're just doing stuff for like the confidence in yourself, right? And kind of an ego boost to you, right? And you need that. It's like a dopamine hit. And so whether or not there's people watching you, doing it for yourself goes a long way, right? And so that's I like how you split it into different phases. Like, that's really good and very valuable information. And if I was to like tell my 18-year-old self to do things differently, oh my God, the list goes on. Like, it'd be like a whole diary. So like, I want to talk about because you're a freelancer, because it's important to have multiple streams of income and stuff. Are you invested in stocks? Are you invested in real estate? How is real estate in Hong Kong?
Okay, so yes, the answer to both questions is yes. I'm invested. Everything that I'm invested is actually Apple stock, because it's a company that I love, and I mean it's done amazing. Like I was really lucky to invest when I did, which was almost 10 years ago. So for me, Apple is like a long-term investment. So that's good. In terms of real estate, and it was one of the advices that I was given after my first job, my first year of working, when I was in my early 20s. The savings that I had, I used them to invest in a very small flat in the Canary Islands, which I still keep. And that flat has been just paying itself off, because I think it's a good investment when you're able to just rent it out and have it off pay the mortgage. Now, real estate in Hong Kong is a different beast. It's insane how expensive it is compared to big cities, even like New York, even like Sydney. So my husband and I, we invested here 7 years ago. We decided that instead of spending $10,000 US a month renting, because that's probably what you get here, what you have to spend, which is crazy money. We were going to invest in a place, so that of course meant that a place would be much smaller because of how expensive the square footage is here. But it's been an amazing for us, an amazing decision, because we feel that we are actually investing in our future, investing in our retirement. So yes, we invested in the place where we live. And 5 years ago we also decided to invest in a small place, similar concept as I mentioned for Spain, that would be rented out. So we did Airbnb. So I was an Airbnb host as a freelance gig, I guess,
Yeah.
for quite a few years. And then during COVID, we decided to sell it because we didn't want to have too many eggs in the same basket. And we felt that diversifying our portfolio was a good idea, especially not knowing what is going to happen with Hong Kong and the COVID regulations and restrictions and so on.
Yeah. No, a couple of follow-up questions on that. The one in the Canary Islands, is that Airbnb or is it like long-term renter in there?
Long term. Yeah,
Oh,
I feel that the Airbnb it's very profitable, but it requires a lot of work. From personal experience, you end up offsetting, the difference, because it requires a lot of communication, check in, check out, things break. So in the end, I prefer to just have it long term and not really have to worry about the daily issues that happen.
Nice. And then as far as the Hong Kong place that you guys purchased 7 years ago, assuming that you're living in there right now,
Yes.
what is the prices in Hong Kong and like US dollars, I guess? And then like I know you said the square footage is super small, so is it like towers like New York, like condos, townhomes? What's
You
kind of
have
the
So where we live is more like a Chinese building that we renovated inside, but
okay?
you also have a lot of the new condos. So in terms of prices, I mean, my head is in Hong Kong dollars, but if you want to have a
I
place like, yeah.
I was gonna say you can give me the Hong Kong dollars and then I'll figure it out.
Okay, okay. So basically, if you want, what we're looking at, because we would like to upgrade at some point, is a place where you have a little bit of outdoor area, 2 bedrooms, maybe 3, and the prices that we're looking at, so you can translate, is probably 20 to 22 million Hong Kong dollar. This is not something fancy or like a big lobby or anything like that. It's just like a family place in a normal neighborhood. So you can convert there.
What is 22 million? Like
Hong
20
Kong dollar.
like 20 say it again?
22 million Hong Kong dollars.
Okay, Hong Kong dollars. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's I think that's gonna be like pretty. That's a lot though in US dollars, I believe.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And I'm saying, yeah, I'm not talking about a fancy place. I'm not talking
Yeah,
about a swimming pool in the lobby. I'm not talking about any of these things. I'm talking about a residential place for a family of 4. So
yeah. Nice.
that's to
What
give you a
a-
concept.
as your kids get older, do you guys plan to move somewhere else or you're gonna
I don't know. I mean, in my life, for me, I'm an open book. I would love to live somewhere else. So we'll see where life takes us. I really enjoy the experience of living in Australia. What I do love about Hong Kong is that it's a very international place, and I do love it when my kids, they are now learning some Chinese at school. They have friends from Japan, from the US, from Europe, and I think having this exposure to diversity, it's really great in a city that is very, very safe, which is also, as
absolutely.
a parent, as you know, huge concern. So of course you have compromises. As I said, you spend tons of money for a place that is tiny, but you also have the upside of living here.
Absolutely. I guess that would be a great next question is what language was first for your kids?
So my husband, who is from Australia, speaks English to them, and I speak Spanish.
Huh?
And at school, they have English and Chinese mostly.
Hmm.
So Chinese they are learning because we just came back. My dream would be that they speak Chinese fluently so that they don't have to continue learning it in their 40s like I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully they could get to that, 20,000 characters up there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's cool. So what kind of lessons do you plan to teach your kids? As you traveled the world, you've learned a bunch of different things. What let's put it into a box. What 3 most important lessons are something that you plan to teach your kids, maybe that you weren't taught at a young age?
Mm-hmm. I think, as you said, when you're traveling somewhere, things are very different. And different doesn't mean worse. Very often we tend to criticize the food, or we tend to criticize the way people behave. And I really want them to be global citizen, as in going to different places with this explorer mindset of things are not, I'm learning basically. I'm here to learn, and I'm here to understand that things are different, and to be inclusive. I think that would be one of the lessons. I think the second one would be for them to always, and this is not necessarily about traveling, but being positive, really going with the mindset that you are gaining when you're meeting someone new, when you're going somewhere else, is really about opportunities. So I really want them to have this opportunity, this mindset of opportunities. When you see that something is really difficult, for me, going to China was really difficult. I didn't understand the menus. I ate things that I didn't want because I didn't know what I was ordering. So instead of looking at it as a challenge, for me, it was like, well, this is an opportunity. I'm going to learn Chinese. I'm going to be one of the few foreigners who learns Chinese. So first lesson is being inclusive and accepting diversity. The second one is having this mindset of opportunity. And the third one is really simple: be kind. Be kind. Like your experience, our experience, I consider ourselves to be very privileged in the sense that we live in a great place. They have education, they have access to travel the world. Many other people don't. And not judging people for the experience that they have had. Just try to be kind and to help others.
Yeah, no, I love all of that. That is great. And I think it's very important. You touched on like the traveling, right? You learn a lot, and you said something really good. And you said that different doesn't necessarily mean worse, right? Even when I was traveling, I think it's important to understand how other people live, because it humbles you as well. And then you can also understand their experiences and culture, right? And when something very important for me was when I was going to go to college, right? I was like, I am not going to college in the same hometown. Like a lot of people, they wanted to stay local, and I was like, I need to go somewhere. I need to be somewhere in a totally different place than where I've grown up. And so I ended up going to Colorado. I'm from California. I ended up going to Colorado in college, and it's like a 99% white school, right? It's a liberal arts school, very small. And I just put myself in a different environment, and it was probably the best decision I've ever made, because I came out a whole different person. I learned, financial literacy, what financial freedom was, right? What businesses are, and so if I would have kept myself in the same environment, you really are a product of your environment. Like that saying is very true, right? So I think it's important to kind of diversify, and I think that's good that you're gonna give your kids that, right?
Exactly. And on what you were saying, it just reminded me of a saying. I don't know the exact words, but it's something like, you think that your thoughts are your own, but you're actually thinking with your cultural lens. And so the whole idea is that a lot of what you think is conditioned by the culture you're in, but what you see in the media, but what your parents tell you, but what you see at school. So for you to really have like this free thinking, you have to remove a lot of these lens that have been put on you throughout all these years of cultures and stereotypes and how you grew up.
Yeah, no, wow. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming up here. You dropped a lot of knowledge today. It was great getting to know you, and I want to go travel now. Now my wife is probably gonna be like, all right, we're going here, we're going here. So I just want to thank you. Go ahead and let everyone know where they can follow you at.
Absolutely. So, well, we've been talking about LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Veronica Llorca-Smith. You can find me on Medium as well. And if you're interested in the lemon tree mindset, you can definitely check it out on Amazon.
Perfect. And then I like to wrap up the episode with a segment called Guided Conclusions. It's one question that we did not talk about previous to this recording. That question could be very serious. It could be funny. It could be sad. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Someone sounded nervous. All right. If you could merge two countries together, which ones would it be and why?
Wow. I
Gotcha.
would merge. Can it be three? No, it has to be two.
It has to be two. It has to
Okay,
be two.
it has to be two.
Yeah.
I think I would merge Spain and Hong Kong. And the
That
reason why,
totally different. I was not expecting that.
well, the reason why is because it will be a little bit like closing the loop for me because I was
Mhm.
born in Spain and I've been through all these different countries, like 9 different countries, and now I'm in Hong Kong, which is where my kids were born. So it's almost like connecting those roots together and closing the loop.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. What do you like, one more question. In each country, what do you like the most? Like, let's say Spain, food, and then Hong Kong culture. Pick what do you like the most in each country, Spain and Hong Kong?
So out of these two, so in Spain, I love the street life. The fact that you go at midnight and the streets are full and there's party everywhere, and I absolutely love that. In Hong Kong, I love the contrast. I love how you have things that look so Chinese, and then on the other hand, it's called like the New York of Asia because it's so modern, and you have like skyscrapers and the best restaurants and all of that. And I just love that contrast that you have like all these two different worlds, so different but combined.
Yeah, yeah. No, every time I think of Hong Kong, I first off think of like Fast and Furious when they filmed it in Hong Kong, but that gives me the idea. It's like the New York vibe. I see that, right? I see like it's literally like New York modern. Like they're probably going to be the first ones that have like floating cars and stuff. So, but yeah, no, that's really cool. Well, like I said, I appreciate you coming up here. It's been a pleasure. Make sure you guys go follow Veronica on all social media. Make sure you grab her book. And any last words you have to say?
No, I just want to encourage everyone. I think that the biggest advice that I could give is start somewhere. I love to say the action over perfection. If you are waiting for things to be perfect, but probably not going to happen, if you start today, that's your first step. You're starting your race, like I did my half marathon.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite quotes, it's actually from the Bible too, is faith without action is dead. So get
Love
started.
it.
Yeah. Well, you guys heard it here. This is the Misguided Podcast where we intend to guide you to a better future. My name is Juwan. I'm sitting here with Veronica, freelancer, world traveler, everything. You guys make sure to tune in, like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the other side.